I didn't choose fame. Fame just happened to me. Robert Downey Jr. He was Hollywood's golden boy, charming, brilliant, impossible to ignore. Every smile lit up a room, every word turned into a headline. But behind that effortless charisma, there was a man quietly falling apart. Robert Downey Jr. wasn't just an actor. He was a miracle kid, the son of a rebel filmmaker born into a world that blurred the line between art and chaos. By the time he was 5, he was on screen. By the time he was 8, he already knew what addiction looked like. He had everything: talent, success, fame. And yet, behind the camera, he was losing himself one night at a time. Before he became Iron Man, he had to survive being a man made of iron, hard on the outside, broken on the inside. At 59, his truth is no longer about the superhero he played, but the human being he had to rebuild. Robert Downey Jr. was born in New York City, 1965, in a world where art and addiction lived under the same roof. His father, Robert Downey Sr., was a rebel filmmaker, a man who challenged Hollywood's rules and lost himself in the process. His mother, Elsie, was a gentle actress, always trying to protect her son from the chaos around him. But there were no boundaries in the Downey home, no bedtime, no school routine, just film sets, cigarette smoke, and conversations too heavy for a child. Robert's first role came when he was 5. His first hit of marijuana came when he was 8, offered by his own father. A moment meant to bond father and son, but it became the beginning of a lifetime struggle with control. He grew up surrounded by artists, dreamers, and addicts, people who lived fast and burned bright. To survive, Robert learned the same lesson they all did, that pain could be hidden behind performance. He became a master at pretending everything was fine. If he could make people laugh, they wouldn't notice the sadness in his eyes. As a teenager, he moved from one city to another, New York, Los Angeles, Santa Monica. Always the new kid, always the outsider. His parents divorced, and Robert followed his father to California, chasing film sets instead of stability. While other kids were learning how to live, Robert was learning how to act. Act on screen. Act in life. Hide the pain. Smile for the camera. Keep moving. He once said, "When you grow up in a family like mine, pretending feels safer than being real." And that's exactly what he did, until the mask became his face. In the mid-1980s, Hollywood was changing, and Robert Downey Jr. was its new obsession. At 20, he was everything the industry wanted: smart, magnetic, unpredictable. He wasn't just acting, he was alive on camera. Every scene, every word, every glance carried something real, a spark of danger that made him unforgettable. He joined the cast of Saturday Night Live in 1985, ready to conquer the world. But even then, there was a restlessness behind the jokes. The spotlight thrilled him, but it also scared him. By the late 80s, he was everywhere. Weird Science, Less Than Zero, Chaplin. Each role was more complex than the last. And in Chaplin, in the film that would define him, Robert became the legend of silent cinema himself. He didn't just play Charlie Chaplin. He became him, the clown who made the world laugh while quietly falling apart inside. Critics called it a masterpiece. He earned an Academy Award nomination at 27. He had money, fame, respect. He had everything, except peace. Because when the cameras stopped rolling, he didn't know how to stop performing. The parties got louder, the nights got longer, and the line between character and chaos started to blur. Cocaine, alcohol, reckless decisions. They weren't part of the script, but they became part of his life. Hollywood worshipped him in public, but whispered about him in private. He's brilliant, they said. He's dangerous, they added. He could make an audience cry on screen and make a studio executive cry off screen. The truth is, Robert Downey Jr. was living two lives: the star everyone adored, and the addict no one could save. He once told a friend, "I have a shot at being the biggest actor of my generation, or the biggest disaster." By the mid-90s, the disaster was winning. But before the world saw him as a superhero, they would watch him become something much darker, a man at war with himself. For years, Robert Downey Jr. lived like he was bulletproof. Every movie, every party, every scandal, it was all part of the performance. But real life doesn't fade to black when the scene ends. In 1996, the headlines hit like gunfire. Hollywood star arrested. Drugs, gun, chaos. Police found cocaine, heroin, and a loaded pistol in his car. The world that once applauded him was now watching him fall, in slow motion. He tried to laugh it off. He went to rehab, promised change, swore it was over. But addiction doesn't leave quietly. It whispers, it waits, and it wins. In the years that followed, Robert became a ghost in his own life, in and out of courtrooms, rehab centers, and broken promises. Each time he said, "This is the last time," and each time it wasn't. Hollywood turned its back. Directors stopped calling. Producers replaced him overnight. He went from red carpets to mugshots, from movie sets to prison cells. In 1999, after violating parole again, Robert was sentenced to nearly a year in the California Substance Abuse Treatment Facility and State Prison. The boy who had once lit up the screen was now inmate P507-22. Inside those walls, there were no scripts, no cameras, just silence. Days blurred into weeks, nights dragged on. He spent hours staring at the ceiling, asking himself how the hell he got there. He wrote letters to his family. He read books. He learned how to be alone. But mostly he learned how to face himself. He later said, "It's not that I was afraid of dying. I was afraid of living the same life forever." Behind bars, he realized the enemy wasn't fame, or Hollywood, or even drugs. It was the part of him that didn't believe he deserved better. When he finally walked out of prison, there was no one waiting. No crowds, no reporters, no applause. Just sunlight, freedom, and a terrifying question. Now what? He'd lost everything. His reputation, his career, his trust. But somewhere beneath the scars and the shame, something was still alive. A spark. A voice whispering, "You're not done yet." That voice, faint as it was, would soon lead him toward the greatest comeback Hollywood had ever seen. When Robert walked out of prison, the world had moved on. Hollywood had forgotten him. To most people, he was a cautionary tale, a brilliant man who'd thrown it all away. But Robert wasn't done. Not yet. He started small, tiny indie films, low-budget projects where he was paid by the day, if he showed up sober. Studios demanded drug tests before every shoot. No one trusted him, and he didn't blame them. He was rebuilding from ashes, and this time, brick by brick. He learned discipline the hard way. Wake up early, stay clean, stay focused, work harder than anyone else in the room. He stopped chasing applause and started chasing peace. Then, in 2003, fate sent him someone who would change everything. Susan Levin, a film producer, calm, intelligent, the opposite of everything his old life stood for. They met on the set of Gothika. Robert fell for her instantly. She didn't. She told him, "If you want this to work, you need to get sober. For good." And he did. Not for fame, not for money. For her. Susan became his anchor, his mirror, his reason. She didn't fall in love with the Hollywood star. She fell in love with the man who was finally learning to fight for himself. With her by his side, Robert rebuilt his life, quietly, patiently, one day at a time. He stayed clean, married her, started a family, and for the first time, he wasn't performing for anyone. Then, in 2008, a phone call changed everything. Director Jon Favreau was casting for a Marvel movie about a genius billionaire with a broken soul. Every studio said, "Don't hire Downey. He's too risky." Favreau didn't listen. He said, "Robert doesn't just play Tony Stark. He is Tony Stark." When Robert put on that armor, it wasn't just a costume, it was a symbol of survival, forgiveness, and rebirth. Iron Man exploded. The audience didn't just see a superhero, they saw a man who'd walked through hell and came back shining. And that's when the world finally realized Robert Downey Jr. hadn't made a comeback. He'd created a miracle. Iron Man didn't just save Robert Downey Jr.'s career, it redefined what a comeback looks like. In a single decade, he went from inmate to icon, from courtrooms to comic conventions, from Hollywood's lost cause to the face of the most successful film franchise in history. Robert didn't just play Tony Stark, he was Tony Stark. Flawed, brilliant, human. The kind of hero who doesn't hide his scars, he owns them. For more than 10 years, he carried the Marvel Cinematic Universe on his shoulders. Every film, every line, every wink behind that metal mask reminded audiences that heroes don't have to be perfect. They just have to rise again. When Avengers Endgame hit theaters and Tony Stark said, "And I am Iron Man," it wasn't just a line in a script, it was a declaration from a man who had finally become his truest self. But Robert's legacy isn't made of box office records or superhero suits. It's built on redemption, on second chances, on the belief that no matter how far you fall, you can always stand up again. Today, he uses his fame for good, mentoring young artists, supporting recovery programs, funding charities. He's proof that success isn't about avoiding failure, it's about transforming it. Robert Downey Jr. will forever be remembered as Iron Man, but more importantly, he'll be remembered as the man who turned his scars into his superpower. Today, Robert Downey Jr. doesn't need the armor. He doesn't need the spotlight, the applause, or the fame, because he's already won the battle that really mattered, the one inside himself. Behind the legend of Iron Man stands a man who faced his demons, fell hard, and got back up stronger. He's proof that no matter how broken you are, you're never beyond repair. His story isn't just about Hollywood or addiction or success. It's about redemption, about becoming the hero of your own life. So if you've ever felt lost, forgotten, or trapped in your own mistakes, remember this. Every fall has a purpose. Every scar has a story. And sometimes rock bottom is just the foundation you need to rise again.